department calls next witness.
Yes.
The department calls Ken Swindle. Mr. Swindle, if you will please state your name for the commission
Yes, Ken Swindle.
and give a brief detail of your education, please.
Okay, I'm a school psychologist with the state. I've been a school psychologist about the last 30 years.
And do you hold any licenses?
I'm licensed by the state of Mississippi, yes.
Is that the Department of Education?
Yes.
And who's your employer?
I'm self-employed. I'm an independent school psychologist. I also am a partner in Fluency Plus.
And how long have you been operating Fluency Plus?
Since about, my partner and I were doing it before we incorporated, and I think we incorporated in 2003.
And what services does Fluency Plus provide?
Well, we provide a variety of services. We do academic and behavioral interventions. And in terms of behavioral interventions, what we do is that we really go in and help a school district in terms of special education policy and policies of regular ed, such as Policy 4300 and the board policy regarding RTI. So what we do is we go in and try to help schools work through that maze, if you will. And I guess to give an example, if you have a kid that's SLD maybe, which is specific learning disabilities, for example, and maybe you have another kid that has emotional difficulty. So how that would work within response to intervention or the RTI model is that the RTI model is involved with every kid in the school, which is something that everybody gets. And then kids with learning disabilities, they might get more intensive services. So for example, if you have a learning disability and you have a speech problem, for example, you might be in regular ed, which we call the least restrictive environment. Okay? If you have a speech problem along with that, you would get a lot more detailed services like 101, which is called related services. So that means that schools would usually have a speech pathologist to deal with speech services, which are 101 related service. If you're in EMD, on the other hand, you're probably going to go to regular ed, right? But you also probably need some related service, which in this case would be counseling. And a lot of the districts have difficulty from the standpoint of we're pretty set in the way we do things, right? And from the standpoint, we hire speech pathologists. We've been doing that for a long time. It's only been in recent years that we really looked at emotionally handicapped kids. So the capacity is generally not there from a school district to provide those related skill services. For example, the speech pathologist has been on staff. Who's going to do that for a kid that has emotional problems? We have counselors in our school, right? So, I mean, they're the logical person to try to pick up and see that kid, but they already have services that's been going on for a number of years, and they're setting what they do. They do a lot of stuff with the MCT2. They do a lot of stuff with scheduling and that sort of thing. So who does that? And so what we try to do is come in and help districts build a capacity to help these children.
And how many school districts has Fluency Plus worked with to resolve compliance issues?
Well, we've worked with several in Mississippi and several in Louisiana. We've worked with the Grenada schools over the last couple of years. They had some issues with under-identification of EMD. They have done well. Cleveland School District and Indianola School District also have trouble with EMD. I think they've just undergone their audits, and I'm not sure if they're going to get out from under their cap or not, but we have helped them. Helped Lauderdale County, I think they did get out from under their cap. They're also in Holmes County, and that was a negotiated settlement, so that's a little different. We are still in Holmes County now. As far as Louisiana, Lake Charles, we're in Lake Charles Parish. It's called Calcasieu Parish, actually. They have about 30-some thousand kids. We've been there about 3 years, and I think they have about 60-something schools, and they have about 10 right now that still need some help. So I think we're probably going to be there another year.
And have you worked with school districts similar to JPS?
I would think Lake Charles is very similar since it's that size. East Baton Rouge Parish has about 42,000. We've been there for a couple of years. Actually, there was a move to bring them out from under their cap this year, but they actually elected to have consultants for 1 more year. So I think they're very similar.
And in school districts similar to JPS, what techniques or advice has Fluency Plus provided or offered those districts to help them get into compliance?
Well, what we do is that the first thing you have to do is find out what the systemic problems are. For example, I just went over the problem with counseling and using somebody. So what we do, and I don't know if you heard the word yet, but we use some protocols. But basically that's a way to gather information to find out where districts are in this process. You know, what have they done right? What have they done wrong? So from that point on, then we're able to, have some more specific training. A lot of districts do a lot of training, and Jackson Public School has done a lot of training. But what we try to do is to look at and target training to more specific needs. So over time, we can really determine, have they come up and done what they needed to do.
And when was Fluency Plus retained to work with JPS?
I'm going to have to refer some time notes for that. We were hired by the State Department of Education on November 22nd, 2010, to do a records review for the Jackson Public Schools. So we did that. We compiled a report, and at that point we really didn't hear anything, and we went back to Jackson Public Schools on January the 25th, and we met with Lonnie Edwards and his, leadership team. And so at that point, we were making plans to say what type of technical assistance we were going to provide. And at that point, he promised that we would have the cooperation from the school district.
And what is your understanding of Fluency Plus's role in working with JPS?
I think similar to what I've been expressing, and that is to go in and find out what type of problems are there. Again, the protocols that we use, for example, we were talking about related service. What we would do in that instance is if you have a kid that has emotional handicaps or has been removed for more than 10 days, we would look to see if that kid did need related service. So what we would do is look in the IEP, see if he has that kind of thing. And then on top of that, there's really compliance issues here. A lot of people have stuff down, but are they getting the services? And so the way that we look at that is that we compile data by the month of office referrals. And if a kid is supposed to be getting related service, then you would think that he wouldn't be getting into trouble as much and have less office referrals. So we gather that data, not only on individual children, but as a group to determine where we are and what we need to work on. So from that standpoint, the protocols would look at those issues. How many times has a kid been referred? How many times has he seen the counselor? And, unfortunately, sometimes what we find is that he's had counseling scheduled for 30 minutes a day for 6 months, but he's only got it 4 times. So it's really, if you want to have effect change, we got to see if you're getting what you're supposed to get. So that type of thing. So we would come up with a plan from looking at all of these areas, we look at all the areas that's probably been mentioned already, which would be related service, least restrictive environment, transition plans. For example, in transition plans, we see a lot of, I want to be a football player. And in and of itself, that's, could be okay depending on the kid, right? But if you're reading on a third grade level and you don't play high school sports, then that's not a very good transition plan. So we look at all of those issues and then come up with what do we need to do first and have specific training in those areas. And then from there, we would move on. Sometimes you have to do it simultaneously, but that sort of thing.
And how many consultants does Fluency Plus have assigned to the JPS project?
Well, off and on, Dale Bailey, my partner, and I, for sure. We have several other consultants that work with us. Tony McClendon is here today. She also works. Tony Doggett. And then we have some other people we call depending on the specific need. Sometimes we have some special educators or program developers in special ed that might have some expertise that we would need.
And how are consultants chosen to work with Fluency Plus on a project?
Well, again, that would depend on the expertise. So depending on what we need, in general, like Jackson Public Schools, it is a pretty big project. So we definitely, since we're looking at emotionally handicapped kids for the most part, then it's mostly school psychologists. But again, we also use some counselors and some special educators.
Is Fluency Plus still working with JPS to work towards compliance?
Well, I'm not sure that we really ever did. I can go through a few more things. I said that we met with Mr. Edwards on the January 25th of 2011. We met with the leadership team again on April the 1st. We had requested at that point to look at their suspension data, and what we do with that is we basically look at kids who have had one or more office referrals and have had 10 or more office referrals. And we try to get an idea from that, what type of services we need. There's some national norms related to how many office referrals you get. And at the high school level in general, it's about 20 to 30% of the number of kids. You got 100 kids in school, and we would think that maybe 30 of those kids would have at least one removal during the year. So you can easily judge from that. If you have a school that has 50 and it's a 50% level, we can say something's going on with their Tier 1 program in terms of behavior. So what we mean by that is that academically we have a curriculum, right? So what is the curriculum for behavior? How do we handle that? And that's PBI has positive behavior interventions and supports, which what they try to do is to, number one, is to teach kids what's expected. We teach expectations. We have lesson plans. So you have to teach them what to expect, right? And then the other side of that is that if you have a kid who can't read, we do a fairly good job of trying to teach them to read, right? Unfortunately, on the behavior side, most people say that you should come to school already knowing how to behave. So we try to change that around from the standpoint of, no, maybe you need some teaching, right? If you, for lack of a better way to say it, if you cuss all the time at home and you come to school and you cuss and you're removed from school or out of school suspension, then you probably need some training, right? Why is that not respected? That sort of thing. I'm probably getting off.
Mr. Swindle, let me see if I can ask my question another way. Are you still retained by the Department of Education to work with JPS?
So I have attention deficit. So what I was saying there is we were meeting with JPS to.
I'm going to interrupt you again. I'm sorry. Are you still retained by the Department of Education to work with?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And so you're still working in that collaborative environment?
I think where I was going with that was no. I mean, we've done several reviews for the State Department. about the status of the kids. But as far as collaboration, what I was going to say is that we developed some protocols to look at this kind of stuff. They disagreed with those protocols. What we did is come back together and work that out as a compromise. And then we started a review that day. Started a review 418 using those protocols, and then we were stopped by JPS at that point. I'm not sure why they didn't want us to use those protocols.
Will you explain what you mean when you say protocols?
And that's what I've said before. What we tried to do, protocols are a way of looking and assessing where a district is in terms of implementation. And I use the example of a child having a related service. What we would want to know and see on his IEP is he getting those? Is it on there? Is it available? Another thing that we would look at is the counselor actually seeing him? So those protocols outline operationally what should be done.
Okay. And you said you did reviews. What do you mean when you say reviews?
Well, we basically went in and looked at records, and we would, again, use these protocols to determine if those things matched what should be done. So basically, we evaluated the records.
And what happened on 418? Were you at that visit?
Yes. That's when we were. Let me make sure. We were doing the file request. We had been through some of the records, and we were called into the office and said that they didn't want us to look at any more records.
Did they say why?
No.
And who told you that information?
It was Dr. Sanders, the Special Education Executive Director.
And what did you understand your role was on April 18th, 2011, when you went in there to do file reviews?
I thought it was our understanding that we were getting baseline data to move forward with the project. We had collaborated on the protocols. We thought that we had an agreement on both sides. So we used that evaluation, again, as a baseline to see move forward, how much progress are we making in the future.
How many times has Fluency Plus gone to JPS?
After that time, we were there 5/19, 5/25. At that point, we were, I think I need to back up. I think that we were using our own protocols on 418. When we were stopped, they wanted us to renegotiate. So on 5/19, we worked with the leadership to work out the details of the compromise wording, which we did. And then on 5/25, we went in with those protocols and did the actual review that was halted the first time. And then after that, we weren't in the district, but we did write a draft plan, of which a corrective action plan, which Jackson Public Schools around the 9th of September submitted a revision of that plan. On 9/26, we revised the plan again, and then we heard nothing else. Then we were called in on 11/15 to do another file review, and then we were recently called last week to do another file review on 4/18.
Did all Fluency Plus team members go on each visit to JPS?
No.
And how is it determined who attends a visit?
It really just depends on availability of the people that we have.
Is there any consideration to the needs or the requests of what's to be done at that visit?
Well, they were all pretty much the same.
And how does Fluency Plus coordinate among its consultants to update everyone regarding information obtained from a visit?
Well, some people go back and write the report, and then if somebody writes it on their own, we all review it and make revisions to that report.
And the times that you went into JPS to review records, what types of records did you review?
We reviewed some of the original petitioners, and we also select some similar situated kids, which we define as having 10 or more office referrals.
And did Fluency Plus prepare any reports after the follow-up visits or visits to JPS?
Yes, each time.
Okay. You see the exhibit book in front of you?
Yes. This one.
Feel flip to what? C17?
17.
Yes.
What exhibit?
17. And behind the letter, and this is the document that's now become Exhibit 33.
This is part of the document then that is being admitted under seal?
Yes, ma'am. Did Fluency Plus contribute to the November 15th to 16th follow-up monitoring evaluation report?
I'm not sure we're talking about the same one. November what?
Are you on
16?
C17? Did you flip past the letter?
I did.
Stay on C17.
Oh, that's this letter. I was looking at that letter. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. If you will flip to C18,
Okay.
flip past that letter.
Okay.
The document behind the letter has now become Exhibit 34.
Yes, that's correct.
Did Fluency Plus contribute to the findings and decisions?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Did you go on the initial visit in November?
No, I called the initial visit, no.
For this report.
Dale Bailey and
Can I ask
Tommy.
Dr. Swindle to speak closer to the microphone?
Sure.
I have a hard time hearing.
I did not go on this visit. Tommy and Cleon and Dale Bailey went on that visit.
And go flip for me to C22. If you will look at the report behind the letter,
Yes.
that report has now become Exhibit C35. Is this the September 26, 2011 report you were testifying about earlier that
Yes.
Fluency Plus contributed to?
Yes.
And is this the improvement plan?
Yes, this was a revision of that plan.
What was the purpose of the visits to JPS?
Which time?
What was your understanding of the purpose of the visits to JPS? Not the meetings, but when you went to do file reviews or...
The purpose at that point, again, as I've stated, was to just examine the files and to begin looking at a process of implementation of some type of correction action.
Do you think that Fluency Plus achieved its purpose during the visits to JPS?
Yes.
Did you review the September 9th, 2011 CAP submitted by JPS?
Yes.
I believe that is Exhibit C23. Is that the document that you're talking about?
I reviewed, yes.
Yes. Okay. And then the September 26th document was the response and recommendations based off of that document. Is that correct?
Well, I thought we were talking about the September 9th, I think it was 26, I have to go back. I'm looking at the one that we did right now. Are you
Which
referring
exhibit are you on?
I'm on 22, I guess.
Okay. And 22, that improvement plan that was done on September 26th,
Right.
that was in response to the September 9th.
That is correct.
And after the November 2011 follow-up visit and the report that came out related to that, did the members of Fluency Plus think that JPS was in compliance with federal and state laws and regulations regarding special education?
No.
Why is that?
I think JPS had begun doing some training, that's for sure, and that's a good thing. You know, the difficulty, and particularly they started doing a better job with the non-original petitioners. However, the consistency just wasn't there beyond that.
Fluency Plus went back to JPS in April of this year, correct?
Yes. And we've written a draft report for that, but that was last week.
If you will, please flip to C26. Actually, go ahead and flip on over to C28.
Okay.
Have you reviewed this response from JPS?
No, I don't think I have.
Okay. When the report in November of 2011 was issued, was JPS in compliance with the federal and state regulations?
No.
Have they been cleared of any of the issues?
Not that I know of.
And in your opinion, what aspects of compliance are still lacking for JPS?
Again, I think that they have done some training, and I think even in the last one on last week, it was evident that they had done more training. The issue with that is actually following through with implementation, and that's what we really want to get a good look at. And for those kids that we examined, I don't know if this is preliminary, but it was very similar to the November thing. In this case, for example, I think improvements were made. I don't want to
I'm going to
minimize.
object to his findings as of last week. We haven't had a chance to even review his information. So if he's testifying with regard to what they found last week, I think he'll be appropriate this year.
Sounds like he was going to say, testify back. Sounds like he was being positive about JPS, but I would
Well,
suspect.
I would hope he would be, but the problem is that we haven't seen the results of their visit from last week. And I just think it's inappropriate for this board to entertain information that we haven't had a chance to even look at.
Similar to the objection with Ms. Moore.
That's right. I don't have
Let's
an
limit-
objection up to that point.
I sustain the objection. Let's limit his testimony to matters that